In this tutorial, we're going to demonstrate Windows Server 2012 Hyper-V replicas between two Hyper-V clusters in separate sites. So I have two sites. On each site, I have one Hyper-V cluster called cluster A in site A, and another Hyper-V cluster called cluster B in site B, both belonging to different subnets. And in each cluster, I have two nodes each. So host nodes 1 and 2 in site A, cluster A, and host nodes 3 and 4 in cluster B in site B. So to begin this tutorial on Hyper-V replicas between clusters and different sites, the first thing you need to do is to add a rule that is called the Hyper-V replica rule to each of your Hyper-V cluster. So I'm going to select Hyper-V replica broker and select a name for that Hyper-V replica and an IP address. Click next and finish. Then I'm going to do the same for cluster B. And once that is completed, we can go ahead and configure our replications, our replicas. So back inside A, I'm going to right click on the replica broker rule, select replication settings, and I'm going to enable this cluster as a replica server. Use Kerberos for authentication type, and I'm going to allow replication from any Hyper-V cluster. And the location to store the replica files is going to, for me, I'm going to place it into C drive cluster storage volume 1, which is a CSV volume. On both clusters, I'm using CSV volumes. So this is what cluster storage currently looks like on site A, cluster A. I just have two virtual machines. I'm going to replicate this virtual machine here, Win2K8. And you see I just have a single hard drive that is going to be replicated to site B. And if I take a look at the cluster storage on site B, I'm currently on a server in site B, you will see that I have absolutely no data in the cluster storage volume 1 folder. But when we enable replication, we'll see what happens. So I'm going to configure replication on site B cluster B, enable cluster, use HTTP authentication, and the same settings I had before, except this time is going to be for the second cluster, Hyper-V cluster. And that is completed. And now all we need to do is to select the VMs which we would like to replicate to cluster B. So if I take a look back on cluster storage volume 1, it's still empty, there's no folders in it. But now I'm going to select a virtual machine, a highly available virtual machine, server 2K8. I'm going to enable replication for this virtual machine. It's simple as enabling replication, and typically you would want to, typically these virtual machines are very large, so you would want to ensure that you have enough bandwidth. So it has auto-detected all the settings that we've configured previously. And I'm going to select to replicate all the hard drives, virtual hard drives. Let's go next, and I can select additional recovery points or snapshots to the next site to be replicated. I'm just going to allow the latest recovery point. Go next, and I'm going to send the initial copy using external media to demonstrate how you can just export the virtual machine and then import the virtual machine on the second site. And this is very useful if you would not like to use up all the bandwidth while transferring your large virtual machine. So I'm just going to export this to the C drive. I'm just going to export it here. Let's go next, finish. And we click on finish, and we see that on the second site we see a Hyperv replica folder has been created, and in that we have the virtual machine, the virtual machine identifier for the machine that is to be replicated, and the virtual hard disk which has not yet been replicated. So this folder has been created for us, and if you take a look on host 1 where we did the export, we will now have to get this folder across to our server so that it can be imported. So I'm going to copy this folder across. This is exported data with the virtual hard drive and the virtual machine ID. So I just need to copy this onto this server. Ideally, this is how you would do this if you had very large virtual machines and you don't want to perform that initial replication over the network. And the exported file has been copied to my destination cluster. Now if you take a look at the virtual machine on the primary cluster, if you view replication health, we will see that the replication is taking place but the initial replication is still in progress, which means that we need to import that virtual machine which we just copied over to the destination, and I'm going to do that now. So on the destination cluster, the virtual machine, it will be off, and if I go to replication, I see this import initial replica to select. Click on view replication health. Tells me that initial replication has not been completed yet, and it will be ready for failover only after initial replication. So let's go ahead and complete that. But before I do that, I want to make a change to the virtual machine on the primary site. So I'm going to create a document here on the desktop. And now let's complete that initial replication on site B. I had copied over the files to host 4. Right now the virtual machine is on host 3, so I'm just going to move this to host 4, and now can complete the replication. And complete initial replication. So that's completed, and now we can take a look at replication status. says last synchronized at 6:50 and replication has been enabled. And now we can test failover from our primary site. So right click the virtual machine and select planned failover. It's going to check that the machine is off and replication is set on both sides. So I'm just going to stop the virtual machine. And right click and do this failover again, replicating data that has not yet been replicated. And it's finished. So if I go to host 4, I see the virtual machine running. I can connect it and let's see if the changes that were done previously, if they remain. And here we see the file that we've created before. So the replication has been reversed. If I want, I can also create another test document here and view replication. Replication is occurring in the opposite direction now. If I go to the C drive cluster storage location on this destination site, you will see the virtual hard drive and all the information within the Hyperv replica folder. And on the host site, primary site, cluster storage, nothing has changed much, but let us do a failback. So I'm going to stop the virtual machine. And do another planned failover. And we see the data has also been replicated backward. And the folder structure on our primary site has remained the same. So this ends our tutorial on Hyperv replication in Windows Server 2012.